and it is my absolute pleasure to be introducing you today to our special guest. But first, I'd like to share with you why I'm so excited about Senator Elizabeth Warren. I first became aware of Senator Warren about 15 years ago when I overheard the parents of one of my friends talking about her book, The Two-Income Trap. I was intrigued at the apparent contradiction in the title. A family earning 2 incomes is more likely to have financial issues. But it's true, and I'm sure many of you here have recognized that feeling of working harder and harder, but not seeming to get ahead. So that was my introduction to Elizabeth Warren. Fast forward a few years, and I discovered that a new favorite pastime of mine was actually watching videos of her lectures online. I'm fun at parties. And so I was blown away, not only by the research that she was presenting, but just how obvious her conclusions were once you heard them explained. And the more I learned about Elizabeth Warren and from Elizabeth, I found myself more and more dismayed that our political policies and policy makers just seemed oblivious to the criticality of these important issues. So of course, I cheered out loud when I learned that President Obama had selected Elizabeth Warren to design and help stand up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And finally, American workers had a champion in their corner. And I was ecstatic when when Elizabeth Warren announced that she would be running for Senate. And I cheered even louder when she cast that decisive 60th vote for the passage of the Affordable Care Act. As Senator, Elizabeth Warren has continued to be a tireless advocate for the working class. She's fighting for more transparency, taking on big banks, and doing everything she can to rebalance the scales for the American worker. Senator Warren's tenacity and fierce intelligence continues to be on full display now as she runs for the office of President of the United States. These traits are perhaps most evident in the sheer quantity and quality of the policy proposals she has released. Senator Warren not only knows what she wants to do, she knows how she wants to do it. Elizabeth Warren is here to fight for you. Are you a worker struggling for fair pay and benefits? Elizabeth Warren is fighting for you. Yeah. Are you struggling to find and afford quality childcare so you can work? Elizabeth Warren is fighting for you. Are you struggling to figure out how you're going to pay for your children's or your own college education? Or maybe you completed school, but you're worried about starting a family or finding a home with an overbearing amount of college loan debt. Elizabeth Warren is fighting for you. Or maybe you're concerned about your or your family's health care. Elizabeth Warren is fighting for you. Now, it is my absolute honor to introduce you. Let's give a really warm Iowa welcome to Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Introduction. I very much appreciate it. It is good to see all of you here. It's like getting to be here with family, in fact, doubly so, because my sweetie is with me on my first trip to Iowa, my husband, Bruce. Stand up, sweetheart. Yes. So I really want to start by saying, yes, I'm glad to see. Good that you're there. I really want to start by saying how much I appreciate you all coming out. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon. There are a million things you could be doing, but you're here. Our country faces a really perilous time. And what happens to us in 2020 is going to determine our direction for probably the rest of this century. And that decision is going to come right through the center of Iowa. So thank you for all your investing in this. I really do appreciate it. We got to get this right. Thank you. So like Drew said, I thought maybe I'd talk a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit about who I am, what I'm fighting for. We'll take some questions. Drew, you're going to moderate, right, on the questions. Keep this rowdy crowd. Okay, ready to go. We'll do some questions. And then anybody who wants to stay, we can stay and take pictures for as long as you want to do that. That's the fun part, exactly. So I grew up in Oklahoma. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I have 3 older brothers. Much older than I am. I'm what used to be referred to as the late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. And all 3 of my older brothers, they went off and joined the military. My oldest brother, Don Reed, was career military. He spent about 5.5 years off and on in combat in Vietnam. We were very lucky to get him back home. Very lucky. My brother John was stationed overseas for a little over a year. My brother David trained as a combat medic. Now, all 3 of my brothers are now retired. They all live in Oklahoma, all fairly close to each other. And we do have, though, in our family, we try to get together pretty often, but there's a rule in our family, and that is never choke around David, the youngest one, because he carries a sharp pocket knife and he is convinced that he could perform an emergency tracheotomy at any point, and that all that training, he's just never had his chance. So it makes for some very exciting Thanksgivings. Anybody goes, and we all just back out of the room. Wasn't me, David. But I'm close to my brothers. I love my 3 brothers. When we were growing up, our daddy did a lot of different things. He sold fencing, he sold hardware, he sold paint, he sold carpeting. And when I was in middle school, all 3 of the boys by then, they are still referred to as the boys. Even in their retirement, they're called the boys. All 3 of the boys were gone, and it was just my mama and my daddy and me. And my daddy had a massive heart attack. And he pulled through, but he couldn't work for a long, long time. And we lost the family station wagon. And I remember my mama used to tuck me into bed at night. And then after they thought I was asleep, I'd hear them talk. And that's where I learned the words mortgage and foreclosure. So one day I walk into my parents' bedroom, and on the bed is the dress. Some of you in this room will know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And there's my mama. She's in her slip and her stocking feet, and she's pacing and she's crying. And she's saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She had never worked outside the home. And she was truly terrified. And I remember, she stood there. She looked at that dress on the bed. She looked over at me, just a kid, and kind of did the back and forth. Finally, she wiped her face, she pulled on that dress, she put on her high heels, and she walked to the Sears Roebuck and got a minimum wage job answering phones. And that minimum wage job saved our house, and it saved our family. And for many years, I thought that was just the lesson my mama taught me, and that is, when it gets tough, when you're scared, it doesn't matter. You reach down deep, you find what you need to find, you bring it up, and you take care of the people you love. And it was years later that I came to understand that wasn't just my family's story. It's the story of millions of people all across this country who, even when they're scared, even when it's hard, they reach down deep, they find what they need to find, they pull it up, and they take care of the people they love. It was only years after that that I came to understand that that is also a story about government. Because when I was a girl, a minimum wage full-time job in America would support a family of 3. It would cover a mortgage, it would pay the utilities, and it would keep food on the table. Today, a minimum wage job in America full-time will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight. Because understand this, the reason for that change, it's not gravity, it's not foreign pressure. The reason for that change is because of a decision made in far-off Washington that touches all of our families. When I was a girl, the question that Washington asked, you go back and look in the records, was what does it take a family of 3 to get a foothold in America's middle class? What will it take a family of 3 just to get a start that they can build from? Today, when talking about the minimum wage, the question that's asked by Congress is what will improve the profitability of giant multinational corporations? Well, I don't want a government that works for giant multinational corporations. I want one that works for our little families. That's why I'm here. So I've known what I wanted to be since I was in 2nd grade. I know that seems a little early for some of you. Some of you didn't decide till probably 3rd grade, 4th grade. But I knew, I actually did. I've always known what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for America's public school teachers? Love it. Yep. I made up my mind early and never varied from that. In fact, I used to practice with my dollies. So I'd line my dolls up. I would teach school, good lessons. I was tough but fair. And I had a good reputation. But that's what I wanted to do. Like I said, the boys had all gone off to the military. That was their ticket. My path was I wanted to be a school teacher, but that takes a 4-year diploma. By the time I was graduating from high school, we didn't have the money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years of college. So like a lot of people, I have a kind of twisty story around this. It's got good parts and bad parts. My family couldn't afford it, but I got a scholarship. Yay! And then at 19, I fell in love. Yay! And I got married. Yay! Not to that guy. Yay! And I dropped out of school. Ooh, and I took a job answering phones. And I thought that was going to be my life. A good life. Just, I was never going to get to teach school. And then I found a commuter college that was 45 minutes away and cost $50 a semester. Yeah, and for a price that you could pay for in a part-time waitressing job, I was in business. I hung on for dear life. I finished my 4-year degree, and I became a special needs teacher. I have lived my dream. Now, I call it work. It's not work. Special needs, it's a calling. And I would probably still be doing that, except by the end of the first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, the principal wished you luck, showed you the door, and hired someone else for the job. So there I was. I'm at home. I got a baby. I can't get a full-time job. And so I get this crazy idea that I'll go to law school. baby on hip, I find a public law school, costs $450 a semester, but I make it, do my 3 years, graduate visibly pregnant, you will notice a pattern to this, and practice law for 45 minutes. And then went back to my first love, which is teaching. I traded little short ones for big tall ones, and taught in law school for a long time, and always taught money. That's always been the thing that, so I taught contract law and commercial law and corporate finance and bankruptcy law, kind of all those pieces about money. But there was one central question that I always worked on. And that central question was, what's happening to working families in America? Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? How is it that people who work every bit as hard as my mother worked find the path today rockier and steeper, and for people of color even rockier and even steeper? And the answer is like the answer I was talking about on minimum wage. It's because of decisions made in far-off Washington. That's a big part of it. Understand it this way. We have a government that works great. It works fabulously for giant drug companies. It just doesn't work for people trying to fill a prescription. It works great for big financial institutions, just not for paycheck to paycheck families who are trying to make it without getting ripped off. It works great for giant oil companies who want to drill everywhere, just not for people who are worried about climate change bearing down upon us. It is a government that works great for those with money, for those with connections, but isn't working for everyone else. And when you've got a government that works great for those with money and not for everyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. It's corruption. And here's the deal. Whatever issue brought you here today, if there's a specific issue that brought you here today, I guarantee that the decision in Washington is touched by those with money, pushed in the direction they want to see it, over and over and over it. It touches everything that gets done in DC. So here's my pitch for what we need to do as a country. We've got to make change, not little change, not nibble around the edges change, but we've got to make big structural change in this country. Big change. Yeah. And here's how we can do it. The first is, let's attack the corruption head on. If you attack the corruption head on and disrupt it, you got a chance to make other changes you need to make. So, how can we do that? Well, I got a plan for that. So how can we do that? Here's the good news. I have the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. Here's the bad news. We need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. So it's got a lot of moving parts to it because there's a whole lot going on in a whole lot of ways that money influences what's happening. But let me just give you a couple of pieces of what it's about. One part of this bill is end lobbying as we know it. They have too much power in Washington. Yep. A second part, block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Enough of this. Another one, the Supreme Court. Make the Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics. Conflicts of interest. I'll do one more, just one more here. And that is anybody who wants to run for federal office ought to have to put their tax returns online. We know what people's businesses are. We ought to have that. I've done it. All right. So part one, attack corruption head on. Part two, we got to rewrite some of the basic rules in this economy. And let me give you a couple of pieces of that one. Right now, giant corporations, they just kind of roll wherever they want to roll. They roll over their own employees, they roll over their customers, they roll over the communities where they're located, and there's nothing to stop them. The way that we get some balance back in this system is when there's more power back in the hands of employees. And for me, that means we got to make it easier to join a union and to give unions more power in the negotiations. Yep. Unions built America's middle class. Unions will rebuild America's middle class. So that's one way we can restructure this economy. Let me give you a second one. I've proposed an ultra-millionaire's wealth tax. This is a tax on the top 0.1% on their wealth. It's a tax on wealth. By the way, anybody in here own a home? You've been paying a wealth tax every year. They call it a property tax. Here's the difference. I just want to do this at the federal level, and what I want to include in their property tax, in addition to the real estate, I just want to include the diamonds, the yachts, and the Rembrandts. Just kind of loop it all in together. And here's the basic idea. The first $50 million, you're still clear. I see you look relaxed now, okay? Good. But that 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to put in 2 cents. And 2 cents for every dollar after that. And look, the basic idea behind this is not to be punitive. It's just to say, guys, come on. You built a great fortune. You had a great idea. You worked hard. Good for you. Or you inherited well. But one way or another, you have this great fortune. I guarantee that great fortune was built in part using workers all of us help pay to educate. I guarantee you got your goods to market using roads and bridges all of us helped to pay for. You were protected using firefighters and police officers all of us helped to pay for. And now all we're saying is you made it super big. Just put a little back in so everybody else gets a chance. That's what this is about. Yep. And just so you understand, you know, some folks say, oh, this is going to be about soak the rich. Nah. Right now, this year, that 0.1%, the 75,000 biggest fortunes in this country, those families, they're going to pay about 3.4% of their total wealth all in on taxes, on all the taxes they pay, income taxes, sales tax, everything they pay, right? The 99.9, which may include some of you in this room, are going to pay on average about 7.4% of your total wealth. You know, I'm just tired of freeloading billionaires. I just want them to just pay a little bit more on this. Because here's how this restructures the economy. If they put in 2 cents on all the money above the 50 billion, I want you to know what we could do with that money. We could pay for universal child care for every one of our babies, age 0 to 5. And universal pre-K and pre-pre-K for every one of our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. Oh wait, and universal college, public universities, tuition free for all of our kids. And there's more. We could cancel student loan debt for about 95% of young people who have student loan debt. And still have nearly $1 trillion left over. Think about that. That's what I want you to see about this. That is how far out of balance our economy has gotten. 2 cents, and we can make life-changing differences for millions of people across this country. We can invest in our young people. We can build a future, and we can do that together. We can do this. Yep. We So part one, attack the corruption head on. Put them on the run. Part two, just rewrite a couple of the structural rules in the economy. Now let's do part three. We got to protect our democracy. I want to see a constitutional amendment to protect the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted. Roll back every one of these voter suppression rules. It's outrageous. And just one more on this. Overturn Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. So there it is. Just three things. Just three things. And to me, they're not three separate things. They're three things that are related to each other. And they're all related to who this government works for and who we build opportunity for. You know, the folks at the top, good for them, but they got plenty of opportunity. This is about building opportunity for everyone else. An opportunity to get an education, an opportunity to get a good job, an opportunity to be able to start a small business, an opportunity to be able to move back to a small town, an opportunity to start a family, to buy a home. Remember, I'm a special needs teacher. Sometimes what we're talking about is just an opportunity to live independently. But it's an opportunity that we all invest in those opportunities for all of us. Because here's how I see this. My daddy, he ended up as a janitor. But his baby daughter, she had the opportunity to become a public school teacher, to become a college professor, to become a United States Senator, and to become a candidate for President of the United States. America. Thank you. All righty. Thank you.
All right, we're going to have some time for a couple questions.
Yes.
Any hands?
You're going to do this.
I think, do we have someone doing mic?
We got somebody running with a mic?
Gentleman, or this woman right in purple.
So can I. Here, somebody's got you a mic.
I'm a 15-year self-employed.
Tell me your name.
Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Yes,
Okay.
Hi there. And my first introduction to you was Bill Moyers.
Oh, such a good man.
And I thought, who is this professor? And you really are angry about the injustices.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about it.
Yep.
And I was so delighted. Oh my God. So
Yep.
delighted. When
Thank you.
Senator and the Consumer Protection Agency
Yeah.
and all that, which Mulvaney is trying to decimate. Anyhow,
But he's not going to. Okay.
Okay, so, and I was at Joni Hurt's town hall at 7:30 this morning. I asked her the same question.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So Joni and I are going to get the same question here. Okay.
Abysmal in her answer.
Okay.
So I'm a self-employed healthcare professional for 15 years, and I'll tell you what, I didn't have any pre-existing condition, but 15 years ago, it was horrible.
Yep.
Insurance choices, catastrophic. It was crappy insurance. So at least on the Affordable Care Act, you can get insurance that meets those minimum standards.
Yep.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit. I think the Democrats were so awful on selling it. The risk corridors went away in 2015. That was a poison pill that was put in.
Yep.
That's increased the premiums.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people knew that those minimum standards also included the health insurance, employee-based health insurance.
Yep.
Because some of those. And so I just would like you to speak with that. And the Medicaid, privatization of Medicaid is killing our health care right now. That would be another issue where, they're not paying the places I work at.
Yep.
It's very frightening. Our health care in Iowa is in serious risk right now. When 40 to 80% of the budget is Medicaid.
Yep.
So anyway, I will sit down, and I am so thrilled to be here.
Okay, I got this. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you. No, that's a great, I got it. I got it. Okay, so we're ready. So let's start when we talk about healthcare. Anything that's hard and complicated, let's start with the parts that are easy. Healthcare is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. Yep. So what's our goal? Our goal is to make sure that everybody in this country is covered by good health care at the lowest possible cost. That's what we're looking for. That's kind of the center of what we're trying to do. So how are we going to do that? Well, right now, number one is we have to defend the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans are doing everything they can to knock the legs out from underneath it. They're doing it in court, they're doing it through the agencies, and we got to be vigilant. Second thing we got to do is when, not if, when we take back the White House and the Senate, let's pick the low-hanging fruit first. Let's reduce the cost of prescription drugs across this country. We can do this. Multiple ways. We can bring it in from Canada. I've got one on generic drugs. We've got a lot of ways we can do this. The third one is how do we eventually get to where we need to get everybody covered at the lowest possible cost. I support Medicare for all because the numbers show it is the cheapest way to get us where we need to go. So I'm there. And it's got a lot of pathways in. It's going to take us there are a lot of ways to figure this out. But there's something I want to talk about healthcare because Susan put this in my mind about what we haven't talked about enough, about our values, because that's what this is really based on. This is really a measure of who we are as a people. So I watched when the Republicans voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Do you all remember that? Yeah. It's been, right? Yeah. But watched when they succeeded. Remember when they got their majority after Donald Trump had been sworn in, you watched them and they high-fived each other. And I thought, who high-fives somebody else for taking away health care from millions of people? Boy, what a moment to celebrate. And one of the things that had been buried in that bill was not just rolling back the Affordable Care Act. They wanted to roll back anything that Obama had touched, right? That was just a big part of this. If Obama had been in favor of it, they were against it, right? So they wanted to roll that back, but they did something else. They went after Medicaid as well. On the notion, because Democrats had never really defended Medicaid much. I mean, we vote for it, but never really gotten out and talked about it. Kind of like Medicaid is like other people, not us, right? Not us. 2 out of every 3 seniors in a nursing home is counting on Medicaid to pay the bills. That's how it gets paid. Anybody in here know anyone who's had an opioid problem or mental health issues? Odds are very good it's Medicaid that's actually picking up the bill for any medical treatment that someone is able to get. One more. Anyone know a family that's had a baby that ran up $1 million in medical bills in the first couple of months? Yeah. Even if the family had gold-plated health insurance, both parents, it's Medicaid that covers the speech therapist and the occupational therapist and the breathing therapist and the special equipment for feeding and for breathing so that this baby has a chance to survive and a chance to thrive. So here's how I look at this. Medicaid is the measure of who we are as people, who we are as a country. We don't know whose grandma's going to outlive her savings. We don't know whose beloved brother or friend is going to get caught in the grips of a mental health episode. We don't know whose beloved niece is going to have the baby that runs up $1 million in medical bills. But what we do know as Americans is that we're all going to pitch in some today and every day. So if it happens to your family or to your family or to your family, we're all going to be there for each other. That's what healthcare in America should mean. So, good. So thank you, Susan. What else we got?
Another question? In the very back.
Okay. So earlier this week,
Tell me your name.
I'm Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So earlier this week, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said the VA is not broken. Do you agree with that? And if you do not, what would you propose to fix it?
Okay, so I didn't see the quote, so I don't know what she was. I didn't see the interview. But this is what I can tell you. I got 3 brothers who are veterans. And man, I hear the stories up close and personal about what's not working. I hear it from people who come through my office. I hear it from neighbors and friends. The parts that aren't working, that it's hard for people to find, how long the time is before you can get help. The restrictions on which prescriptions you can get filled, right? Whether or not you can see a specialist. I get those parts, but here's the part I also hear. From most of the veterans I talk to, including my own brothers, they don't want us to abandon the VA. They don't want vouchers and have to go into the private system. They want their VA, they just want their VA to be fixed. That's how this stands. And here's how I look at it. As somebody, I think I was 3 when my brother Don Reed first headed off to the service. My mother, this is back when kids used to be allowed to stand in the front seat. You remember that? She dropped him off. We'd driven up from Norman. She dropped him off in Oklahoma City, and she was crying. This is her first one, and he's headed off. And she's crying and crying. And this family story is that I kept patting her on the face saying, "Don't cry, Mama, you've still got me." But I grew up in a family where my mama looked every day at the mail. Were we going to hear from one or more of my brothers? And on the days when there was no mail, it would be, "We'll hear from them tomorrow." And on the days when there was mail, she couldn't wait for my daddy to get home so she could say, "We got a letter from John today. Got one from Don Reed. David sent us a letter this time." Our military have given up so much and have agreed to be separated from their families. Their families have given up so much, all in service to this nation. They have agreed to put their lives on the line. And that means, at a minimum, we honor our promises to our military. And that means the first-rate medical care that they are entitled to. So we got to put the resources into the VA. We got to make sure they've got the facilities they need and make the VA something that makes us all proud. Fair enough? Good. Okay, good.
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, 2. Okay, sorry.
You're
I'll try to talk shorter.
Very excited. So.
Okay. Hi.
I'm Pam Ferris. I
Hi,
grew up on
Pam.
a farm in an impoverished area, put myself through school through scholarships, Pell Grants, and like that.
God bless.
My question is about farming, though. I grew up on a farm. The Farm Bill does a lot to help the corporate farmers.
Yes, ma'am.
But boy, the family farms are impoverished, and they're dropping like flies, and the farmers have the highest rate of suicide in our nation.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you do?
Okay, so thank you, and thank you for the question. For me, this goes right to the heart of what I was talking about before. When I talk about corruption in the system, it's who goes to Washington to lobby the Farm Bill. You're not doing it. You can't afford to, right? It's not the family farms, and don't get me wrong. They'll put in a section called family farms. They'll throw a little to the family farms, right? But not real. Who's writing the Farm Bill are the corporate farms, right? The big ag, they're not even farms. The big ag is making sure that they are taken care of. So I got a couple of pieces on this that I think may be helpful. The first one is to enforce our antitrust laws. We need to break up big ag. This is just, in my view, this makes no sense at all. And you can help me, Pam, if I have this right, but here's how I understand it. We've got, for example, enormous concentration in seed suppliers. And that has a couple of consequences, right? One of them is the variety available to you shrinks dramatically. But the second is, as a family farmer, you kind of take it or leave it on the price. They say, this is what you got. You don't want it. Good luck to you, because where are you going to go to get it somewhere else? Same on the other end when you go to try to sell, or when you have, for example, hogs that you want processed, right? There are so few of the buyers, of the sellers to the family farms and the buyers from the family farms, that it's the family farms, the small farms that have gotten squeezed in between. The ultimate version of this is contract farming and poultry now, where one outfit has figured out every step in the process where you can make good profits and taken that for themselves, and then said, in effect, to the small farms, you could take over the high risk part, and the hard work part we'll give you on the, not give, we'll sell to you on the front end, you make the investment, and then we'll come take from you on the back end. So for me, this really goes to the heart of what I'm trying to talk about, and that is a government that when we sit down to write a farm bill, it's not being written by the lobbyists for big ag, it's one that's being written by family farms for family farms. And we've got to replicate that all the way through our government. We've got to have a government that works for us, not just a government that works for the rich and the powerful. So that's for me the heart of it. Does that work? Good. Thank you. It's a good one. Good. Can we do one more?
Yes. Would you like
One more
to pick?
question? Is that okay?
Yeah. Would you like
No,
to pick?
you pick. No.
Yes.
Make this a good one. Okay. Okay.
My name is Tracy Davis.
Hi, Tracy.
And I grew up here in Clinton, Iowa, and I have disabilities. I may not look like I have a disability, but nobody knows what's exactly inside of who I am. And people always judge people who have disabilities. My son is autistic, high function autistic, and ADHD, and other stuff that he has going on. And he is one of those kids that were born preemies and had medical issues. And ever since my son goes to school, there's been issues with his behaviors, and like he'll have his good days, he'll have his bad days, and if you looked at him, he wouldn't look like a kid that has a disability. My question is, since you were a special ed teacher, how important that is to help kids with autism, because there should be more for the kids that have autism.
So thank you, Tracy, for the question. Thank you. You know, for me, the measure of us as a people is how we treat the most vulnerable among us. And it's this basic question of how we see value. I grew up in the Methodist Church, and I do Matthew 25. You don't have to be Christian to follow this story. You don't have to be religious to follow this story. But just give me a minute with it. Many of you may remember this story. It's the story of the shepherd who's separating the goats from the sheep. And the goats are going to hell. The sheep are going to heaven. And when they're separated out, the sheep say to the shepherd, "Why me? Why did I get picked? I look like those guys over there." And the answer is, many of you remember this, for I was hungry and you fed me. I thirsted and you gave me drink. I was in prison and you visited me. I was a stranger and you took me in. And the sheep say back to the shepherd, "But we never saw you. I don't remember doing this." And the answer from the shepherd is, "Inasmuch as ye hath done it unto one of these, the least of thy brethren, ye hath done it unto me." What that story says to me is there is value, good, God, in every single one of us, every single one of us. And the second thing it says to me is that what we're called on to do as a people is not simply to sit, to smile, to just be nice. We are called on to act, and to act for those in need. Those who need food, those who need water, those who need clothing, those who need shelter, but those also who need teaching, who need love, who need comfort. That's the kind of people that we must aspire to be. We'll fall short. We will. But at the end of the day, the measure for me of this life and this country we've built together is how we treat everyone in this country, including you and including your son. So I'm glad you're here today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Thank you. So let me just say, as we wrap this up, I got two things I want to say. The first one is, it means a lot to me to be here with all of you. I appreciate it. I never thought I was going to run for president not in a zillion years. I'm like the most unlikely person ever to do this. All of my life, since I'm not a teacher anymore, seems pretty amazing to me. But I try to hold on to the things that matter most. And one of the things that matters most to me is the guy I married whose birthday's tomorrow, and I'm not going to be with him, so I'm going to surprise him and say happy birthday. Stand up, sweetheart. Okay, do you all mind? To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Bruce. Happy birthday to you. So, make a wish. It could be political. Make a wish. Okay, okay. So anyone who wants to stay for pictures, we'll do that, or birthday cake. There'll be birthday cake over there. The last thing I want to say to all of you is, again, thank you for being here. You know, just three things. That's all I'm looking for. We've got to fight back against the corruption. We have got to change just a couple of basic rules in our economy. And we've got to protect our democracy. I get out there and fight for this, and you know, I went back to Washington after my first trip to Iowa, and I was back in Washington, and people said to me, so I kind of followed what you were doing. You're asking for too much. It's too big. What you're looking for is too hard. Start with something smaller, you know, just ask for a little couple of, smile more. Talk less, yeah. Exactly. And the first time I heard this, I thought, what do you think they said to the abolitionists? Too hard. You'll never change this country. Don't even try. What do you think they said to the suffragettes? Too hard. You'll never change this country. Don't even try. What did they say to the early union organizers? Too hard. You will never change this country. Don't even try. What did they say to the foot soldiers in the civil rights movement? Too hard. You will never change this country. Don't even try. What did they say to the early LGBTQ activists who wanted equal marriage? Whoa. Too hard. You will never change this country. And yet all of them got organized, got in the fight, built a grassroots movement, persisted, and changed the course of American history. We can do this. We can. Dream big. Fight hard. Let's win. Thank you. We're going to do this.